You're all good.
Okay, I'm going to be doing blockchains in the energy grid in all caps because we should be securing the grid through blockchains respectfully. Okay. So about me, if you guys don't know me, I feel like a lot of you do, but if you don't, I'm a first-year computational mathematics and computing security major. As Tenchi said, I run the social media here. I run the Instagram, and I run the Twitter and the Facebook. You see here these plants, my beloved plants. These are Helen and Monica. Now, you cannot tell me, the original owner. Helen and Monica are kind of dying, so Kenny took them for now to nurse them back to health, but I will be the supreme owner once again. And then I'm very loud, which is my thing. I love being loud. Okay, listen. Blockchains are not just for NFTs. Also, NFTs harm the environment and our plants. And then make sure that you follow the social media. It's all this right here, Ritsec or _Ritsec_ on Instagram. I catch you not following us, I will throw hands, respectfully. So we all know about the Colonial Pipeline, but just to recap, back last April, a group of hackers found a password from a data leak on the dark web, and they got into it because it was an old account that wasn't deactivated. And they got into it through the VPN meant for employees. Okay. What they did then was about 8 days later, they took 100 gigabytes of data and then sent a ransomware note demanding $4.4 million in cryptocurrency. And for the first time in 57 years, Colonial shut down for 5 days. And this resulted in about 12.5 million barrels of fuel not being there, which is why we had a gas shortage. And it made me very upset. So the takeaways from this, we need better security. These people weren't even using multi-factor authentication. They weren't deactivating old accounts that weren't in use. They weren't having the proper security practices, and this was last year. So this is probably a common thing that is still happening. And then other areas are vulnerable. We have our energy grid, which I will talk about. We have the transportation systems and more because of how centralized they are. So this is what I'm going to be talking about, blockchains, the energy grid, why we should be using them, and then a conclusion. So again, blockchains for more than just NFTs and cryptocurrency. Okay, so a simple answer of what are blockchains are they're just simple encrypted nodes. So if you think back to computer science, you get a node which is immutable, and then you connect it through a linked list. And that's literally what these are. They're just encrypted nodes. But a long answer of it, we gotta start with a SHA-256 hash, which is a commonly used hash because it, again, is 256 bits, which means that it's 2 to the 256. Hard to crack, I don't know how to explain that, but it's long. There's more possibilities of a value for the hash than there is atoms in this universe, which means it's extremely secure. So every single time that you input new data, it's going to change every single time. And then each exact characters will result in the same hash. So if you look here, these are 2 different websites. They each say hi, and then, again, 3639, 3639. And then we're going to take that hash, and then we're going to put it into a block. So you put the data in, and then you're going to have a random hash. Now you want this hash to be signed, and it's going to make it valid. And so to be able to have it signed, it has to have 4 zeros starting in the beginning. And then how you do this is through a nonce, or a number only used once. And it is through a function of mining. So you're going to start from 1, and it's going to go through every single possibility until it reaches to a valid hash. So if you see here, this is red because this is not valid, because this is not a very good hash. But you can use characters in a hash, which is kind of cool. And then this one is valid. I clicked mine, and then that's what I got. And it will always be 21331. So now we're going to combine the blocks through a chain. So we're going to take the previous hash. So if you look at if you look at B, you take the previous hash. For the first block, it's all zeros. But then if you look at the second block, it takes the previous hash, or A. And then, so what you're going to do is you're going to put the data in. It's going to take that previous hash. It's going to then produce a random hash, and then you use the nonce to get a valid hash. And again, these are an example. Just one mistake will change everything in the blockchain. So if you look here, this is an incorrect hash, and then it changes this hash. And then this is invalid, and then this makes this invalid, regardless of even if this was valid, because these still are the same numbers. And so the results of this are each block is connected. This means one block cannot be changed without messing up the rest of the chain. And that's why the data is secure. It's not unhackable, though, but it is very secure. So now that we know what a blockchain is, how are they used? So there's public, private, consortium, and hybrid. And now they basically differ on who has the permissions to them, who it's open to, and if it's centralized or not. So some public ones are NFTs and cryptocurrencies. And then in this case of using it with Energy Grid, it would be a consortium, because you'd have a group of authority, or the Energy Grid company owners, and then the Department of Energy, which would be a group of authority. It requires cooperation, but it is permissioned. And then some other uses of blockchains. I'm not going to list them all, but there's data sharing, weapons tracking in the energy industry, which are my favorites, personally. But there's just more uses than how we currently view them in the world with NFTs and cryptocurrency. So this is just a quick overview of, again, the steps. You take the SHA-256 hash. You're going to create a block with that hash, and then you're going to use a nonce to make sure it's valid, and then you connect those all through the previous hash, and then you're done. So now going to the energy grid, which is a damsel in distress because of how insecure it is. This is our grid. It's pretty nice, very big. You can see it's very interconnected, which is not good. We have three main interconnections. We have the eastern interconnection, which takes up about half of the United States. It's actually a little bit more than half. We have the western interconnection, which takes up a little bit less than half of the United States, and we have Texas, which Texas does not take up all of Texas, but most of Texas, which is pretty funny. So if you see here, the green is all of the eastern interconnection. And it is not good. This is very interconnected. There's only, I think, 31 areas or 31 extreme power plants which are from this, which again is not good because of how interconnected this is. So our grid is vulnerable for this reason. So what we do is we take main power plants that generate all the power continually, and then it gets trickled down to the areas which need it the most. So it's a top-down distribution. Yes, we love trickle-down economy. Love Ronald Reagan. Oh, he's great. Nah, it's So yeah, it is very centralized. One power plant can go off and then it will be taken care of, but if you were to have multiple, that is where it becomes a problem, and it is highly susceptible to individual points of attack. And then according to the US, there's 4 top global threats. We have Russia, China, North Korea, and Iraq. And Russia is the top global threat. So what have the Russians done? The Russians, or I guess Russian hackers at least, are responsible for the first cyber attack, which resulted in an actual power outage in 2015. What they did is they used spear phishing emails, malware, and the manipulation of the Microsoft Office macros with on-site stuff to harvest credentials, to map the infrastructure, and learn about the ICS, which is the control system. And then they attacked this, and they were able to shut off the power for 3 hours to 225,000 people. And again, this was the first time a cyber attack resulted in a power outage. And then back in 2018, this is not an attack on a energy company, but on a petroleum company. And they had turned off the safety features that prevented the explosions without being detected. And then they sent code to attack and cause an explosion, but the only reason that didn't happen is because there was an error in the attacker's code. And the bad thing about this is that America and other countries were using this exact same system, which got attacked, which means that everything was vulnerable at that time. So back to our energy grid. We've been using a recent increase in data and smart technology to monitor the grid's health. We're also doing this to try and decentralize our grid because of how outdated it is. So we're trying to decentralize it and then also potentially convert to renewable energy. But because we're using new data and smart technology, our grid is extremely vulnerable to cyber attacks because of how many faults there can be. One of the biggest threats is the existence of the ICS, which I talked about earlier, the industrial control systems, because they manage electrical processes and physical breakers. And since they're being merged with technology, these can then be tampered with, and there's not enough security backing them up. And so an insurance company or insurance marketplace called Lloyd's, they conducted this scenario involving the Eastern Interconnection, that's the one that's like about half of the United States. And only 10% of the generators in the attack would need to be successful to cause a blackout in 15 states, leaving 93 million people without power. So why we should use blockchains to protect this? So back in 2019, the Department of Energy gave 2 Carnegie Mellon researchers $400,000 to strengthen the grid technology. So we have Vipul, he was really, really good. He worked with those heat sensors, And he basically says by placing them on a blockchain, then the attacker does not have to attack a single computer, but multiple computers. And this is because of the distributed network that a blockchain provides. And then there's a couple high-level attributes of blockchains. Because of their immutable digital ledger, their distributed consensus, and the smart contracts for automated interactions, this makes them a very high level of security, which would be very, very good for using them and incorporating them into the energy grid. And then blockchain technology has an identification through public-private key encryption, which is asymmetric encryption. And this means that there is a need for authorization while trying to sign in, creating a more secure process, which if we think back to the 2021 attack on Colonial, they didn't have that authentication, which again would have hypothetically prevented that. And then the first pro is the use of blockchain technology would improve efficiency and allow greater control over resources. An immutable ledger allows for a secure and real-time updates, and it also allows for it to be monitored by humans but not have to be processed by humans. There's multi-factor authentication, which takes place, and depending on the type, it would be very difficult to gain access to the blockchains. And then using blockchains would make it easier to update and decentralize the energy grid and potentially put it in a different direction, again, with renewable energy. So the conclusion. Due to the fact that blockchains provide a more secure, decentralized, and connected ledger for ensuring security within the energy grid, we should be using this technology as we continue to incorporate smart technology into our systems. And then thank you. That was my first presentation. Love you guys. Hello, Enzo. Hello? Oh, okay. So some of the negatives would be that it is hackable still. It isn't, and it also is newer technology. It's not extremely new, but it came out in 2011 with cryptocurrency. So it is not fully secure. And then it really depends on, can I go back? It depends on what type it is. So each individual type has their negatives. For example, the public can be accessed to anybody, which means that just one piece of data can be tampered with and it will screw up everything. And then another one of those negatives for I don't think the consortium really has that many negatives, but the final or the newest block can always be tampered with, and that won't really result in anything as long as it's mined again before something else is produced, which means that there can be inconsistencies and that can cause everything. But if you were to mess up with one block, everything else is going to error after that, so you know exactly what was tampered with. Anybody else? Any questions? Okay, I can stand up here if Tenchi wants a mic. I accidentally hit the button, Tenchi. I'm sorry.
Thanks, Claire. I'm a little out of breath, but wait, hold on. This is Claire's first presentation, so she gets an RIT lanyard. What? Well, this is hers now.